A billionaire pretends to be asleep just to test his black maid's little girl. But what the child does next makes him freeze in shock. The mansion of Alistair Cain was a place of shadows and silence, built to intimidate. Its ceilings towered like cathedrals, its marble halls swallowed sound, and in the center of his study sat Alistair himself, slumped in a leather chair, eyes closed, chest rising and falling in feigned slumber. To anyone passing by, it looked as if the billionaire had drifted into an easy rest. But he was not resting. He was watching, testing. Alistair Cain believed the world had only two kinds of people, those who took and those who got taken from. For years, he had trusted no one, not friends, not colleagues, not even the workers in his own home. Tonight, his suspicion had a new target. Angela Jefferson, his maid of nearly 3 years, had arrived with her daughter. The girl's name was Naomi, 8 years old, quiet, with wide eyes that took in everything. Normally, Angela worked alone, moving swiftly and silently through the house. But tonight, with no sitter available, she had pleaded for permission to bring Naomi. Alistair had agreed, but not without calculation. Before they entered, he had arranged the scene. He had left the vault door in his study slightly ajar. Inside, stacks of $100 bills shimmered under golden lamplight. It was bait, plain and simple. To an adult, the temptation would be overwhelming. To a child, irresistible. And so he had staged his little drama. Lean back, close his eyes, and pretend to sleep while mother and daughter worked in the room. If Naomi's fingers reached for what was not hers, he would know all he needed to know. Angela moved about her chores as always, dusting shelves and humming faint gospel hymns under her breath. Naomi lingered by the door at first, her hands folded around a tattered sketchbook she carried everywhere. Her shoes barely made a sound as she walked, her gaze lifting from the polished floors to the gleaming shelves to the faint crack in the vault. The girl froze. She saw it, the money inside, stacked high, glowing like a secret treasure. Her eyes widened, breath catching in her throat. Her small hand tightened on her sketchbook. Behind closed lids, Alistair's mouth curled into the faintest smirk. He had seen it all before. Chauffeurs pocketing trinkets, gardeners eyeing tools, assistants swiping cash. Everyone had a price. Everyone was exposed by temptation. He waited for the small hand to creep forward, to reach where it didn't belong. But then, Naomi whispered, so softly that Alistair nearly thought he had imagined it. Mama says dignity is worth more than gold. Instead of stepping toward the vault, Naomi knelt on the rug. She opened her sketchbook, flipped past pages filled with crayon portraits and charcoal shapes, and carefully set pencil to paper. Her eyes stayed fixed, not on the stacks of bills, but on the room itself. The chandelier, the towering shelves, even the outline of the half-open vault. Her hands moved quickly, sketching the world as she saw it, not the fortune waiting inside. Angela glanced over, startled that her daughter was so still. Relief softened her face when she saw the sketchbook. Good, Naomi, she said softly. Keep drawing, stay busy. Then she returned to polishing the glass cases, never once imagining what test her employer had set in motion. Minutes passed, and Alistair's smirk faded into something else entirely. He had expected greed. He had expected failure. But what he saw instead was focus, restraint, and something he could not name. Not name. The girl never moved toward the money. She only drew. And with each stroke of her pencil, Alistair felt a weight he didn't recognize pressing against him. For the first time in years, the man who thought he had seen everything was wrong. Naomi's pencil scratched softly across the page, her small brow furrowed in concentration. Alistair Kane, pretending to sleep, found himself stealing glances through his half-closed lids. The vault was wide open. Fortune lay within reach. Yet this child had turned her back on it, choosing to sketch instead of steal. Finally, Alistair shifted. He opened his eyes fully and cleared his throat. Angela jumped, nearly dropping the glass she had been polishing. Naomi's pencil froze mid-line, and she clutched her sketchbook tight against her chest. "Sir, I thought you were asleep," Angela stammered, voice trembling. "That was the idea," Alistair said, sitting up straight. His voice was cool, sharp, like the crack of ice in a glass. He gestured toward the vault, the money gleaming behind him. "I left that open on purpose." Angela's heart dropped. "Sir, I wanted to see what your daughter would do." His gaze turned on Naomi. Children don't lie. Children don't pretend. They reveal the truth about their parents, about what's been taught at home. Angela's face flushed with shame and fear. She pulled Naomi gently to her side. "With respect, Mr. Kane, my daughter isn't a thief. She was raised better than that." Naomi lifted her chin, still holding her sketchbook like a shield. Her voice was small but steady. "Mama says money don't make you rich if you lose yourself trying to get it." The room fell silent. Even Alistair, hardened by decades of business wars, felt the words pierce deeper than he expected. He stood and walked slowly toward the child. Naomi tightened her grip on the book, but didn't flinch. When he reached her, Alistair extended a hand. "Show me," he said. Naomi hesitated, then opened the sketchbook. On the page was a drawing of the very room they stood in, every detail captured with uncanny care. The chandelier glittered, the shelves towered. Even the stacks of bills inside the vault appeared in careful pencil lines. But in Naomi's drawing, the vault wasn't the center. Instead, she had drawn Angela, her mother, standing tall, her head held high, light falling on her like she was the most important part of the room. Angela's eyes welled. She hadn't known her daughter saw her that way. ... Alistair stared at the sketch, and something inside him cracked. He had spent his life believing wealth was the only measure of character. Yet here was a child, born into struggle, who saw her mother's dignity as more valuable than all the cash in his vault. He closed the sketchbook carefully and handed it back. His voice was lower now. "Your daughter has something most billionaires don't, Miss Jefferson. She has values." Angela didn't know whether to speak or remain silent, so she simply bowed her head. Alistair turned back toward the vault, swung the heavy door shut, and locked it with a resounding click. The test was over, and he knew in the quiet corners of his mind that he had been the one tested, not them. Naomi tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, can we go home now?" Angela nodded, holding her daughter close. She expected anger, maybe dismissal, perhaps even the loss of her job. But instead, Alistair spoke with an unexpected softness. "Angela, take tomorrow off, with pay, and bring Naomi back here again. I think I've got something to learn from her." Angela's lips parted in shock, but she quickly nodded, murmuring a thank you. As they left the mansion, Naomi clutched her sketchbook against her chest, unaware she had changed something deep inside the most powerful man she'd ever meet. And Alistair Kane remained standing in his grand, silent study, haunted not by greed, but by a child's reminder that dignity cannot be bought. Sometimes, the smallest voices carry the greatest truths, and sometimes it takes the courage of a child to remind even the wealthiest that character matters more than riches. If you believe stories like Naomi's deserve to be heard, make sure you subscribe. Because in a world that often shouts about power and money, we'll keep telling the stories where dignity wins.